Yo, what's good, YouTube? What's good? It's Stormy B, man, and I am back welcoming you to another show for the Three Wise Men of Boxing for this Thursday, October 8th, 2020. We are here, and we're calling this one Boxing, Kibbles and Bits. And once again, as I stated in the past, that we're still without our brother Scrapbook Boxing, but good news, he is on the mend and he will be joining us very soon. So let me introduce our other third portion of the Three Wise Men. It will be Curtis Anderson, aka Kurt Sugar. What's going on with you, Kurt? How you doing, brother?
Man, I'm doing great, man. How you doing, Stormy? What's up, chat? Before we start the show, I want to tell everybody, wish Scrapbook Boxing a happy birthday. Today is his birthday, and we all wish him well. He will be back, but on Monday, he's going to have a special 100 years of boxing. It's going to take at least a month to do, but it starts Monday, and every day he's going to have a video for 30 minutes. He's going to do fights from the 1800s to the Mayweather-Andre Ward era. So that's going to be special. It hasn't been done. This is going to be incredible. The history of boxing, 100 years in the making. He's going to break everything down starting on Monday, I believe. So stay tuned for that. But Scrapbook Boxing, we can't wait for you to get back. Happy birthday.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And that is exciting. We'll be getting more content from Scrapbook. And you know, when he brings it thorough and with great detail and explanation. So that's going to be very exciting. We can advertise it and promote it as much as we can as soon as we get word on when things are going to drop. And of course, you guys, if you haven't subscribed to Scrapbook Boxing, what are you waiting for? Okay, you might as well go ahead and do it now if you hadn't done it before, because there's going to be something very special coming very soon. So as we go ahead and get into this evening's show, and happy birthday to Scrapbook Boxing. By the way, Boxing's Kibbles and Bits. Kibbles and Bits is one of those phrases that my brother Kurt Sugar likes to use, and we thought we would title this show Kibbles and Bits so we can talk about various details, nuances, and just specific items in relation to the sport of boxing this evening. So Kurt can even explain that a little bit better, because it's his phrase and I ain't trying to take it. So tell us what it is all about, Kurt, the Kibbles and Bits.
Well, Kibbles and Bits is a spontaneous show where we talk about different areas of boxing, fights that took place, fighters, stories, everything. Kibbles and Bits was named after a dog food. And before that, Kibbles and Bits, it was a boxing writer from New York named Michael Katz, who used to have Kibbles and Bits pieces in the back of the New York Daily News, a prestigious newspaper in New York. And we turned to the back of the paper and boxing was right there, and he called it Kibbles and Bits. So that's paying a little homage to Michael Katz. It's not one of my favorite writers, but, you know, I did it anyway. But I want to start off with the illusion of invincibility. For those who love boxing and like boxing, we love the title of invincible when the fighter wears that crown, a la Mike Tyson, a la Jack Dempsey, a la Joe Louis, Sonny Liston, George Foreman. You know, we're enamored by these guys' punching power. And even though you may love technical fighters, there's nothing like a puncher. People gravitate to punchers, and I just want to go over that, how fighters were deemed invincible. And I always say boxing is a truth serum. And what it does, it will make you think that you're invincible until that one guy has your number and everything come crashing down. Kaboom. You know, so we're going to start off with a guy they say that was invincible. His name was Jack Dempsey, who became champion in 1919 to 1926. He didn't have many fights. He was knocking out everybody. He was a crude puncher who was very aggressive, who beat the heck out of Willard for the title and kept it until he ran into Gene Tunney. And Jack Dempsey was well liked. He was the number one athlete in the United States. It wasn't Babe Ruth. Much to the chagrin of baseball fans, it was Dempsey who was, boxing was on in front of the newspaper. And he registered with the boxing fan. He captured their imagination because his style was of brute force. And what he did to Willard, broken ribs and jaws and knocking out teeth, I always felt his manager said, his former manager said his gloves was loaded. You know, so they're using whispers because the injuries that Willard sustained, no human being could do that. But Jack was a great puncher, and he was a great brawler. Stormy, can you tell me anything about Jack Dempsey, his aggression and his punching power?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. According to what I've always noticed and observed about Dempsey and his fighting style, went right along with his nickname, the Manasseh Mauler. He was more of a brutal, bruising type fighter, crude technique and kind of lumbering forward, almost like a. I'm trying to think of. It's almost like a guy who pursued with his hands very low, and he was a strong man. You know, 6'1" back then was a good height on a heavyweight, and being a broad-shouldered guy that threw, you know, those ham-fisted shots. And as you said and alluded to, the fact that he may have had loaded gloves or something going on, the damage that he was inflicting on people, you know, it didn't seem, like you said, normal, but he liked to do dirty stuff. He hit behind the head and everything. For those who thought fighters of today, they just invented that. But no, even when he took on Gene Tunney in their bouts, it was Jack Dempsey that looked to just maul the guy. And that's why Tunney kept his distance and used lateral movement to stay away from him. But if he got a chance to lay his hands on you, he could do some damage. So he was just one of those guys in the earlier days of the sport that was a bruiser, I call him. You know, not a lot of jabs and things like that, but pursuing guys, cut the ring off and trap them and just wail on them. You know, that kind of thing. And I don't like to come out and say certain things so brashly or whatever, but I'm just gonna say it. He didn't want to fight no black fighters, so you know, there you go. And I just wonder, for the men of his era that he avoided, how long he would have been able to, you know, stay on top, because there were a lot of great fighters around during that era that could have taken him. So that's what I have to say about that.
Yeah, you know, he sparred with black fighters. He didn't want to give his sparring partner a shot. He was a black fighter by the name of Big Bill Tate. Big dude, black dude, you know, who was a very good fighter, but he was denied a chance at the heavyweight championship. But, you know, like I said, the true serum is you have to, when you fight a technical fighter, you have to think. And most punchers, when they can't land a bomb, they get very frustrated. And you can see the wink go out their cells. So when he met Gene Tunney in 1926, Gene Tunney was a very, very technical fighter with very good footwork. And Jack Dempsey was flustered. He was flustered. And plus, Tunney said that Dempsey was a sucker for a straight right hand, which he knocked Dempsey down. And people forget. It was 2 classic fights that they had. But the illusion of invincibility, and when Tunney beat him, America turned his back on Gene Tunney. The Irish people wasn't treated very well. And Tunney was, and Dempsey as well was of Irish descent, but they didn't like Tunney, because he beat their champion. And that's, I always say, that's the ultimate truth, Sarah. That's why they call boxing a sweet science. But see, it works out for the fan because you're always going to have a puncher around. And people, no matter how many times they've seen it, they're going to gravitate to that puncher. From Jack Dempsey, and then you go from Jack Dempsey to 1937, Joe Louis, when he became champion. Joe was deemed invincible, knocking out everybody. Here's this young, strong knockout artist, from Alabama. And who do he lose to? Max Schmeling. Max Schmeling was an underrated fighter, a good boxer. And Joe made a mistake by dropping his left hand, and Max Schmeling was coming over the top with that overhand right. The first fight was in 1936. And people were shocked and people was crying and Joe felt bad because Joe felt that he let the race down. He let people down. He let America down, even though they didn't care for him, but that's how he felt. And he said, and this is why I'm a Joe Louis fan, he said that until he beat Max Schmeling, he don't feel like he's the champion when he beat Braddock in 1937. And so they rematch in 1938 and Joe got his revenge. And Joe even said before the first Schmeling fight that he didn't take Schmeling seriously. And when you feel invincible and you read your press clippings, that's what happened. You don't take your opponents seriously. That's happened to another guy in Tokyo, Japan in 1990. We'll get to him later, but Joe Louis was the second heavyweight who was a puncher and who fell victim, because he thought he was invincible. And that wasn't the case. Stormy, can you tell us about Joe Louis' punching power? Then we'll go on to the next fighter.
The one thing about Joe Louis and his punching power was he seemed to be a naturally heavy-handed guy as far as punching, but Joe punched with, I was getting some feedback in my earpiece. He was taught to punch with proper technique. So with a 6 to 8 inch punch, Joe could get a great deal of power and leverage on his shots. And if you notice his footwork in the ring, he wasn't one of those guys who glided around on his toes or anything. He had this little bit of a shuffle he would do, but he was always on balance. Some people would even say that he might have leaned a little bit too forward on his front foot, but it was deceptive because Joe had this ability to get into this slight crouch where he would dip to the side and he would catch punches with his mitts, and fire right back at the same time or just before a guy fires a shot or just after a guy fires a shot, because adopting that adage that I always felt like the best time to hit a guy is when he's trying to hit you. And Joe could inch closer to an opponent where he made them feel like, okay, I can punch now, but he was setting you up, because as soon as your hand fist touch his glove, he's firing right back at you, catching you open with hooks and right hands. He was very deceptive with that, and he had a tremendous amount of power with short shots. So he'd get in close enough to you where the way he threw his shots, he didn't wind up or draw back or anything like that. He shot straight from the shoulder and waist, and his shots were so short. Just great leverage on his punches. And because of his posture with his footwork, he got a great deal out of that. But also, it was an Achilles for him because with fighters who had great footwork, like a guy like Jersey Joe, they could move on him and catch him in a position of where he has to like reset, or as he's trying to chase down the guy can get off from angles and everything before Joe can really get back. But during that era, he was a master at being able to cut the ring off and inflict damage on the opponent with those short, clean shots. I remember the shots that he hit Matt Schmeling with in his rematch, and they were so short that they didn't seem to appear to be as damaging as they were, but we all know how damaging they were because of the injuries that were inflicted upon Schmeling. And that one right hand that he hit Schmeling with, where he kind of pushed him with the left and then came over with a right and on the chin, and you could see Schmeling's head shake like a bobble doll as he went down to the canvas, and it was right on the chin. So it was a lot of devastating leverage and power behind that, and Joe was extremely effective. And I'll let Kirk tell you guys about the body shot that he hit Schmeling with, that people sitting as far back as maybe 10 rows could hear him scream in agony.
Absolutely, Stormy. He hit Joe with a body shot. It seemed like his glove disappeared and Max Schmeling's body, and he cracked his vertebrae, and he spent some time in the hospital. And Joe almost cut him in half. And Joe, not raw power, but when it came to technique, using your hips and rotating your shoulders, Joe was the best at it when it came to punches. He was so precise. The technique and precision was unbelievable. And he was a hell of a fighter. That's why he was deemed invincible. Nobody could beat Joe until Max Schmeling. The next fighter I want to talk about, who the fans thought was invincible, was under illusion of invincibility, was Sonny Liston. I skipped over Rocky Marciano because Rocky Marciano wasn't thought to be invincible because he had to come back to win fights. He was behind against Jersey Joe Walcott, so it's not like he was, just killing guys, even though he had a glossy record, 49-0, 43 knockouts. But, Rock had a bad back. That's why he retired at the age of 31. And he died in a crash. He only had 6 title defenses. So that's why, my father says different. My father said he seen Sonny Liston coming. My father was something else, but Charles Sonny Liston was a mean brute of a man. He was a bag man for the mob. When you needed some money to be collected, you called Sonny, and Sonny got the money. To say the least. He used to fight with cops in Kansas City and other places and spend the weekend in jail. You see Sonny with a Band-Aid on his face, but he didn't mind. He was real stone-faced, a brute of a man. Sonny Liston had an 85-inch reach. He had a telephone of a left jab. We don't talk about jabs, but he's up there probably right behind Larry Holmes when it comes to jab, because his jab was like getting hit with a telephone pole. And he was a brutal puncher. You can go look at the Cleveland Williams fight, and his knockout reel, and then how he knocked out Floyd Patterson. And, Jack Dempsey said that Sonny Liston shouldn't get a shot at the title. And Sonny Liston told Jack Dempsey to shut up and told him, you shouldn't be immortalized because you're a draft dodger. Sonny didn't play that, man. Sonny didn't play that. And he was deemed invincible until a young Cassius Clay came along. If it wasn't for Cassius Clay, Sonny Liston would have been champion for the next 10 to 12 years. What can you tell me about Sonny Liston, Stormy?
Well, Sonny Liston was a fighter that, you stole something from me there where I was going to talk about that reach of his. My goodness, for a guy. But what was amazing about that reach, Kurt, is that we see guys today like Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury with those 80-plus inch reaches. Sonny Liston was 6'1", and barely 6'1", but 6'1" with an 85-inch reach. I mean, that's a tremendous reach right there. That right there, because you consider the taller guys of today having 80-plus inch reaches. You know, Riddick Bowes and Lennox Lewis's and stuff like that. So it's like, for a man that was 6 foot and then had the type of power that he had, you know, he fought Cleveland Williams twice, and in their first fight, he knocked him out in the third round. And Williams, you know, he was one of those tough guys of the division as well. But Sonny Liston went through Cleveland Williams like a hot knife through butter, you know, and he was just pounding him with that jab and everything. And then they fought a second time, and he knocked him out in the second round. So Sonny didn't even waste no time with rematches with guys, and as he did with Floyd Patterson, which lets you know exactly how great Cassius Clay was, because what he was doing to these other men in the division, world champions and contenders alike, Sonny was a textbook ham-fisted fighter, but he worked behind a stiff jab, a hard punishing jab, kind of like, if you will, like Pinklin Thomas later in the years of boxing, but not as fluid as that, but more textbook, you know, standing out of the textbook style and coming forward behind that pulverizing jab. Sonny was he was kind of one of those men that put you in mind of like southern born raised men, you know, who was just kind of naturally strong, nature boy strong like that, and very effective and very intimidating. There's a story about him about how he would put extra towels under his robe to make him look bigger and give that impression that, you know, to his opponents that he's a more bigger, formidable guy. And when he walked into the ring, it was a menacing, intimidating image to see Sonny Liston like that. And even after they pulled those robes and towels off of him, he still was a massive man, because he was a solidly built, strong looking guy. So it didn't matter, you know, once he took the robe and towels off, because people would see him and be like, oh crap, that dude is, you know, that's how they looked at him. And he was a thug. Sonny Liston was a guy, he'd hit you on the break, he'd hit you on the hip, he'd hit you, you know, when you wasn't looking, and behind the head. He did it all. You know what I mean? And probably did far worse to people out in the streets, as Kurt had alluded to. But he was a man that a lot of people in the division were intimidated by, and they thought that he would reign for much longer, because they just didn't see a lot of people being able to stand up to the menace that was Sonny Liston. So that's what I had to offer on that, Kurt.
Absolutely. Sonny Liston reign as champion, you know, lasted 2 years. You know, young Ali came along and changed the game. Nobody never seen that speed and that fluid movement and that rhythmic and perpetual motion. Oh, that's a lot. That's 7-1. You know, they just thought he was a loudmouth, the reporters. And what he did to Sonny, Sonny couldn't keep up with Ali hand speed and footwork. It was just too much for him. So when we talk about the Dempseys and the Lewises and the Listons, they have one thing in common. You know, I'm gonna tell you what it is. I mean, you already know what it is when I mention other sluggers, you know, but Sonny Liston had that Darth Vader personality, that stone cold look, you know, that he's intimidating. Floyd Patterson was scared, you know, out of his pajamas. You know, Custom Outer didn't want Floyd Patterson fighting Sonny Liston. Neither did the NAACP. They thought it would be bad. They did. They thought Sonny was a thug, and it would be bad for the image of black people at that time. And Sonny didn't care. Sonny said, I want a shot at the title. And Floyd Patterson said, I got to give this man a shot. And he was flattened in one round on 2 occasions. until Ali came, and and that was the end of Sonny, because a bully is scared of a crazy person. He really thought something was wrong with Ali, because Ali used to stand in front of his house at 2, 1, 3 in the morning yelling for Sonny to come outside. I mean, he just he ridiculed him, ostracized him, antagonized him. He did everything he can in his power to get under his skin. But what Sonny failed to realize, that this guy was a terrific fighter. He just thought he was crazy, and he thought he was going to run through Ali like he did Floyd Patterson, but that wasn't the case. And, that was the beginning of the legendary Muhammad Ali. But Sonny Liston, without Ali, he would have been there for years. And knowing him, he probably would have did something tragic to end this reign. But he would have been there for a while, maybe next 5 years. But the next fighter that was deemed invincible, the illusion of invincibility, we're going to talk about George Foreman. Now, George Foreman is probably the strongest fighter that I ever seen in my life. The way he was pushing Joe Frazier back, and just the brute strength, of George Foreman knocking out Ken Norton and Joe Frazier like they was rag dolls. For Ali, once again, we'll get to that in a few minutes. But George Foreman did have frightening punching power. He was just a brute. And ironically, Foreman was Sonny Liston's sparring partner. So what can you tell me about George Foreman, Stormy?
First of all, another one of those country strong dudes, man. George Foreman being a naturally, physically big man, and from Texas, and George, after he came out of the Olympics and he started his professional career, as you said, he was sparring partner for Sonny Liston, and man, I would have given anything to see some film of that, because George had a punch that even like someone like Liston didn't possess. You know what I mean? But he was a young man at the time too, working with Sonny. So he picked up a lot of Sonny's antics as far as being surly with reporters and stuff like that. It was kind of like, George was kind of like Mike Tyson before Mike Tyson, because he kind of gravitated toward the people around him and influenced him. If they were bad people, he kind of would be bad. Later, as his career changed, he put good people around him, and he kind of swayed toward being a better person. But I always have been of the notion, thinking about George, that under the surface, George was never a nice guy. Never. Even today, you can see the smiling guy who sells the grills and everything. That's not the real George Foreman. The real George Foreman will knock your head off and wouldn't think twice about it. And that's how he actually fought on his way up to the heavyweight title. He tells the story that when he got in the ring with Joe Frazier on that night of January in '73, he tells the story that he was shaking his knees. He was hoping that Frazier wouldn't look down at him, that his knees were shaking tremendously. I don't believe that, because he didn't fight that way. When he was hitting Joe Frazier and put Joe Frazier down, you could look at the tapes of the fight. You could see his corner man. What was his name? Kurt? Forgive me. George Foreman's trainer. Kurt.
Oh, I was on mute. Dick Sadler?
Dick Sadler, I'm sorry. Yeah, it couldn't come to me at that moment. Dick Sadler was giving him indications of, he was standing on the ring apron outside the ring when Frazier was on the canvas. He was telling George, George! And George looked over at him, and he was doing the gesture of uppercuts, and that's what George was pushing Frazier, which it is really illegal. You're not supposed to be pushing your opponent. But George was pushing Frazier off. hitting him with the uppercuts, pushing him back, because, you know, Frazier would come in trying to get into your chest. But George's tactic on that, he was shooting certain jabs, but he was pushing him back a little bit so he could get the uppercuts in. And George was dirty. You know, he hit Frazier in the back of the head. You know what I mean? He hit Frazier when he was down. That was the way he fought. And he used intimidating tactics when he fought. His fight against George Chuvalo, I was trying to figure out, how did Chuvalo take those punches, man? Because he stood in with him, and I mean, he was taking a battering. I mean, literally taking a battering. But it was kind of one of those things, you know. And when they did finally stop the fight with Chuvalo, you know, he was cut, he was hurt, but Chuvalo still wanted to continue. It was like, but to take those punches from a fighter like George Foreman, he was a tremendous puncher. I mean, if you ever saw the movie Ali, where they show them in Africa when they're getting ready to fight, there's a scene where George is hitting a heavy bag, and he left an indentation in that bag. The bag was carved out like someone had taken a huge bite out of the bag, like a shark taking a bite out of the bag. The bag had a C in it from George's fist, pounding it. And when they trained in that gym, Ali would come in after George sometimes, and George having hit that bag, they say Ali never looked at that bag, never looked at it, or no one ever caught him looking at the bag. So it was one of those things where it was a psychological thing, because you look at what he was doing to that bag and you be thinking like, well, damn, he gonna hit me like that. You understand? So imagine that Ali had the mental strength to not allow that dissuade him, because in the fight he let George punch him to the body, and it was definitely debilitating. But to see George hit people and they flop around the ring like when Popeye hits people after he get on his spinach, that's kind of like what you saw when George Foreman was doing things to people. And you look at his record, it's full of KOs, TKOs, KOs, TKOs, because either the TKO was due to a person resigning, or the KO was due to the person being separated from their senses. George Foreman was definitely one of those people that they thought would be invincible.
Absolutely, Stormy. That's one of my favorite scenes in the Ali movie, when he was hitting the bag. Man, it seems so real. You know, when he was, I love that scene. And you can see the bag bending. Oh, I love it. You know, but George, once again, he runs into a guy that was a technical fighter. George was outsmarted. He was bamboozled. He was outwitted by the rope-a-dope. Ali roped him a dope. And he said before the fight, if his parachute don't open at a certain time, he will never get me. And that was true. Ali was smart. Ali let George punch himself out, and Ali started hitting him with lead right hands, holding him behind the neck. That's a move that Ali perfected. That they was zap his strength, and Ali took advantage of Foreman, started walking him around, and he got Foreman out of there because Foreman wasn't used to going 8 rounds. But there you go again. That put Ali on the level that I don't think another fighter can reach. 1 billion people witnessed that fight, and Ali was a 4-1 underdog. That's a big underdog for a superstar fighter like Ali. But people thought Foreman was going to beat the hell out of Ali, and once again, people are enamored by the aura of invincibility, and Ali changed all that. So when you look at it, to show you how special Ali was, he stopped 2 reigns, Sonny Liston's, in the 60s, and in the 70s. George Foreman, he stopped their reigns. 2 of the most powerful punchers that boxing has ever seen. The next guy that we're going to talk about under the illusion of invincibility. And they caught me early on. Then I start asking questions about this fighter from Catskill, New York, by way of Brooklyn. One Iron Mike Tyson came like a meteor. This guy was so popular. He was in songs. He was doing commercials. He was a bigger athlete at that time than Michael Jordan. He was bigger, especially when he knocked out Spinks. He was bigger. He had this quick hands, punching power. He was a different breed. He was just different altogether. Nobody never seen the likes of a guy with fast hands and, wicked short punches that were just taking people out. Every time he would hit them, they would do funny things in the ring. Like somebody else was in the ring besides the referee and the opponent. And Mike Tyson just took the world by storm. He was famous. He needs no introduction the world over. Mike Tyson, I'll let Stormy talk about it, then I'll come back with my rebuttal. And Stormy, what can you say about Mike Tyson?
One of the things that really brought me to notice Mike Tyson was his ability to be elusive. That was more exciting to me when I first saw and heard of him than his punching power and prowess, because I understood that his punching effectiveness was inherent with his ability to slip shots and be in a greater position to counter you. And most people remember Tyson being a knockout puncher, like hitting folks and knocking them out. But Tyson was knocking fighters out with combinations. It was a succession of shots that would go body, body, head, or body, head, body. You know what I mean? And the thing about it was off of a combination, and you just remembered the final shot landing having the certain effect. Now, there were people that he would put down, from a single shot, but typically his KOs were based off of combination punching. And his upper body movement and elusiveness for his size, meaning 216, 218 pounds, you know what I mean? Being able to move quickly, it was amazing. And his elusiveness was always his greatest advantage, along with his footwork. Most people wouldn't realize this about Mike, but Mike in his early years had tremendous footwork. He could close the distance and gaps on people by sliding left, right, forward with foot speed of like a middleweight or something. And he'd be on top of you. And you're throwing shots and he's slipping around them and he's in your chest, and you can't do much about it because it's happening with such speed. And he had a great deal of leverage on his shots because he was taught to punch with a certain type of technique where he used looping shots. Okay. And his looping shots were deceptive because most people, like, if you lean in forward, he'll get you with the uppercut. If you lean back away, he could throw this wide hook, whether with the right hand or the left, with a great deal of power. And because his hand speed was great, he could throw double shots, and they trained him to do that. That's why I said it was a deception that he knocked guys out with single shots. He was usually hitting people with at least 3 shots to get them out of there. One could put you down, but 2 or 3 of them in succession could put you out. And that was one of the great advantages he had. And as a total package, he did those things very well. But another thing about that type of style that he fought, along with other fighters like Joe Frazier and even Rocky Marciano, you had to be in pristine shape and condition to do the things that they needed to do because of their physical dimensions. Being smaller men, they had to work a little bit harder than the average size heavyweights. So once that desire to really work hard and things like that came into play, the talent and the skills would erode quickly for fighters like that. Like Kurt mentioned earlier about Marciano having a bad back and things like that. Frazier, that dipping and bobbing and weaving and taking shots to come in, that wears and tears on smaller heavyweights, especially in an era where you got bigger men primarily around you. So there were a number of issues that all fell into place with Mike, that his career, his reign should have been longer if he had the desire to be champion more. But he had other desires and demons that plagued him and prevented him from being all of that. So there was a period of time when he looked like scintillating, that people would even kind of imagine him on the level of an Ali or whatever. But the truth be told, he could never be on the level of an Ali. Never. But he was exciting. He was in the video era where, like, you could see his highlight clips and things like that, like a football player or something. And they maxed it for him. That's why he's known like he's known. That's because the video era and everything, that grew right along with Mike as he was coming into prominence. Matter of fact, his original managers, Bill Caton and Jimmy Jacobs, they put together a reel of knockout films of him and sold them to the networks to say, hey, we want you to put our guy on. He's exciting and this and that. And when people saw those knockout reels, they were like, holy crap. Yeah, we got to put this guy on the Saturday fights, or whatever. So there began that type of marketing and everything for Mike. But that's what I have to say about Mike, Kurt. You're on mute.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. I respect Mike because he had this personality, Darth Vader personality that people gravitated to. But see, Mike was smart because he played on it. Mike wore socks, anklets, but you just couldn't see him. So Mike said, I ran with it. That's very smart. I would have did the same thing because it was part of his makeup as a gladiator. The Jim Lambert used to say, no socks, no robe. And it made him look like a throwback fighter with the haircut and everything, and the towel, the old school towel draped over his neck, around his neck. And it was cool. He came out sweaty, and, his fights were so exciting and so popular that pizzerias used to sell out of pizzas. You had to order your pizza. Like if Mike fought on Saturday, you had to order it on Friday morning. So it was crazy. Mike Tyson was hella popular. Still is.
Hey, Kurt, there's one other thing about him, Kurt, that he pulled over the eyes of not only the fans, but his opponents. Mike is like between 5'9", 5'10", right? He's kind of really like that. But they used to list him at 5'11" and a half or whatever, right? But this was the deception. And you could see a transition at some point during his career when he was wearing different attire, because, he used to come in with regular boxing trunks and shoes and things like that. But he switched it up to become that more intimidating look or whatever, wearing the black and the black shoes. But what he added to the black shoes, Kurt, was lifts. He had lifts in his shoes. And it was interesting that he could fight with those in his little black boot shoes because they were not flat. If you ever look at them really good, he had lifts in those shoes, which would give him the appearance of being a little bit taller in the ring. Did you ever pay attention or notice that about him? You're on mute again.
Oh, damn it. I met Mike at Bentley's, a club in Midtown Manhattan, and I met him at Ringside Boxing Bar. Nice guy, you can walk up to him. I shouldn't say nice guy, but you can walk up to Mike And he don't believe in turning people down for an autograph. He'll shake your hand. He'll talk with you. You know, some guys you can't approach. Mike was always very approachable. And, you know, he'll talk, you know, because he looked at my boxing shirt when I was in the bar. He used to wear a lot of boxing shirts and stuff. And, you know, I think it was an old school fighter. I forgot. And he asked me what I know about the fight. I said, yeah, or I'm just wearing a T-shirt. And I said, no, I know about the fighters. You know, we talked for like 5 minutes, but ringside bar, Arturo Gatti used to be in there, and it was a great atmosphere for boxing. It's still up, and it's in Jersey City, New Jersey. But anyway, getting back with Mike, you know, some people just got this electric personality. Mike became a bigger than life guy out of the boxing ring. His marriage to Robert Givens, he was on Barbara Waters. I'm getting tongue twisted, excuse me. And it just made him bigger because now his life became a soap opera. You know, she called him a manic depressive and all these things, and Mike is an animal and this and that. Everything Mike did was in the newspaper. Dapper Dan's was a custom-made hip-hop store in Harlem. Remember, he got the jacket, Don't Believe the Hype or whatever, and Mitch Green, and he punched Mitch Green and everything. That was some real street stuff, you know, but Mike was always involved. But I thank Mike because he brought boxing back to prominence. He put boxing on his back. You only wanted to see Mike Tyson fight, you know, and that was Mike's era, man. And even when he lost, even when he bit Holyfield, I was so mad at Mike. But when he fought again, people was right there. And Mike had so many chances for his career. Mike could have been even bigger if he took the sport more seriously. But he wanted to do other things. But the fighters we just named, the illusion of invincibility has one thing in common. They all lost to technical fighters. Dempsey lost to Tunney. Liston lost to Ali. Lewis lost to Smelling. Foreman lost to Ali. Tyson lost to Douglas and Holyfield. And see, the reason I'm bringing this up because that's boxing. But the average fan gets fooled because you're under the illusion of this guy can't lose. He hits too hard. He can't be beat. But what people fail to realize is that boxing, they call it the sweet science for a reason. You can outthink your opponent. Boxing is not a pair six brawl. And we love punchers. We love to see a knockout, drag out fight. Look at Baranchik and Zepeda. We ate that up. We love that because it's exciting theater. But once that puncher meets that boxer who's smart, has a high IQ, and has a rhythmic and perpetual motion, it's a wrap. Then Stormy can tell you, and then we'll go on to the next subject.
Yeah, one more thing I'd like to say about Mike Tyson as well is that, you know, in this era where we've seen to can't get rid of Floyd Mayweather Jr. because although he's supposed to be retired from the sport, his aura is still overshadowing the sport because he's putting himself in that type of position because he's a glutton for attention. Mike Tyson, for all of his flaws and everything like that, has never loomed over the sport with ego. And I admire that about him because, as Kurt mentioned a moment ago, to be as big as he became, being at one time the most popular athlete on the planet over Michael Jordan and things like that, you never hear him today talk about that. You never hear him say, man, I was this and you guys can't, hold a candle. That's not him for all his flaws and everything. And I have to give him credit because he could do that and not be wrong, but he doesn't. And to just be able to, sit back, because sometimes I've heard him respond in awe of what people have to say about him, because people have given him the credit for being a man that they looked at as a conquering, destroying personality type. And he's like, really? You know, he's humble when it comes to that. And that's amazing within itself, with all the things that have transpired in his career, negative and positive, that he still has some sort of humility as a former fighter, that he knows that there have been greats greater than he, and he knows that he has been better than some others. But unlike a Mayweather, that's one thing that you can actually say that Mike doesn't do, you know. And how about you, Kurt? Have you really noticed and acknowledged that about Mike?
Yeah, Mike is humble. He's a very complex person. Mike can be mean, and he can, you know, like I said, he's very approachable. But, you know, he gives, I like Mike because he always gave respect to the people who came before him. He always talked about the old fighters. He's a student of the game. And I appreciated that about Mike. And he talked favorably about Ali and Joe Louis and Sugar Ray Robinson and all those guys, man. So I always did like that about Mike Tyson. I always did. You know, but you will, like I said, you will always have fighters who punches very hard, and they can have a record of 35-0 with 34 knockouts, and then meet a guy who doesn't punch that hard but is very technical, and he knocks out the puncher because he's a more technical fighter. And that's how boxing is. That's naturally how it usually go. Now, not any boxer can beat a puncher, but a master boxer like an Ali or a Leonard can beat a puncher, or Mayweather, somebody like that who's a master in the ring. And so that's why I named that the illusion of invincibility. The next subject I want to get to, fighters that can outthink you and who has very fast hands. The reason I said that, I was watching Sugar Ray Leonard, and I was watching a fight with him and Davey Boy Green. And the combination he hit Davey Boy Green with, Leonard not only had fast hands, but he had power on his shots. And the Andy the Hawk Price fight and the Pete Ranzani fight, and when he got Hearns in trouble, you know, Leonard was a guy who prided himself on knocking you out. And me and Stormy talked about this the other day, where him and Ali did something similar. When they knocked the opponent out, Ali would stand over you, put his feet together, and raise his hand. Leonard would do the same thing, but to make matters worse, to add insult to injury, he will go over to your corner and raise your hand like you won. And your eyes are still glossy, and, you know, Ray was something else, man. And he would raise your hand. If I just lost to Ray by knockout, I don't want my hand raised because I didn't win the fight. You know, Ray would do that, you know, but we're going to talk about hand speed, some of the fastest boxers that you ever seen. And I want to chat the list there, fighters who was fast. Like, you had the Camachos and the Mildred Taylors. You had a guy by the name of Fast Eddie Hobson. But speed doesn't necessarily mean success, because a fighter with great timing can off that speed. But when a fighter has speed and timing, and educated speed is different from just flurrying. Is a big difference. It's hard to beat time. So, Stormy, name some of your favorite fighters who have fast hands.
Well, two guys come to mind right away. Hector Camacho and Meldrick Taylor, man. Those two guys in their primes, they had some hellacious hand speed, man. And Camacho being a southpaw, I think his blazing hand speed when he was at lightweight was really a factor, being a southpaw, catching people from that odd angle, you know, because that was still during the era of when southpaws weren't really, you know, allowed in the sport that much. They were still turning guys around and stuff like that. So, you know, for Hector to do what he was able to do with his hand speed and his foot speed, it was interesting. Meldrick Taylor, he never really had that power, but he had tremendous hand speed. And as he moved up in weight, he wouldn't move as much with his feet. But when he was at the lighter weights, he did have more footwork. But both men had tremendous hand speed. And I loved Meldrick Taylor's performance against Buddy McGirt. My goodness, he really put a whooping on Buddy McGirt, man. And it was one of those things where you just look at it and marvel at his at the way he was able to handle Buddy McGirt. And I mean, he fought guys like, back in the day when he fought like Harold Brazier and Howard Davis Jr. and those guys, Primo Ramos, and but Mel just had those fast hands. Very exciting fighter. They called him the Kid. He was the youngest guy on the Olympic team when they went back in '84, and he was just a marvel to watch. What were your thoughts about Meldrick, Kurt?
Flashy, fast hands. I thought he brawled a little bit too much for my liking. I thought Purnell was going to be the better of the fighters because they was getting compared a lot. Meldrick Taylor IQ could have been higher, but he had that Philly warrior mentality, and he could have made the fights a lot easier. But they messed his career up, man. Putting him in the ring with Primo Ramos and then Terry Nars and Crisanto Espana when he had those leather trunks on. They was putting him in the ring with killers. And they wasn't even giving no easy touches so he can get his confidence back. And it hurt him, and it hurt his career. He had nothing to show for it. He had that terrific fight with Chavez and Lou Duva, and they was yelling in the corner, "You need this last round." All Meldrick had to do is run around the ring. He was up on the scorecards comfortably, and he had nothing to show for a terrific performance, but very fast hands. His finest performance was against Buddy McGirt. I didn't see that come. I thought it would be a tough fight, but Meldrick Taylor went through him like it was nothing. He beat the hell out of McGirt that day. I think I'm going to watch that fight too. But Meldrick Taylor was a talented fighter. Could have been even better if he had a different trainer to utilize his boxing and his hand speed, because he just brawled a little bit too much as a guy who didn't hit that hard. But his power came from speed when he did get the knockouts, though. So Meldrick Taylor was a damn good fighter. But the next fight I want to talk about, who had hand speed, is Sugar Ray Robinson. My favorite fighter of all time. Sugar Ray Robinson was a slugger trapped in a boxer's body. I mean, this guy had over 100 knockouts, in his illustrious career. And as an amateur, he had 69 knockouts, 40 in the first round. So he was always a puncher, and he started out as a featherweight, fought from featherweight in the Golden Gloves all the way to middleweight, a light heavyweight, when he lost to Joey Maxim, in the heat of Zoxton, but he was just tearing guys' head off. You look at his reel, he had a devastating left hook, man, but it was quick because he's a double up on it and triple up on it. See, that's one thing, just to throw flurries of punches, but to throw fury of punches with deadly intentions, murderous intentions, is different. Leonard was the same way, like Robinson. Robinson threw combinations so he could hit you with the second, third punch, so he could set up his left hook. That's where the speed came from, to occupy you, and then boom, he dropped that left hook on you. And sometimes he doubled it and tripled it. So when you go to Sugar Ray Robinson, you can see the finishing, the coup de grace, the finishing touch was always the left hook. What can you tell me about Sugar Ray Robinson hand speed, Stormy? Oh yeah, and that right hand against Rocky Graziano, where his mouthpiece flew up in the air. My goodness, man, he was a beast.
Man, it's a wonder that guys didn't get their teeth knocked out when they, when you saw stuff like that. But Sugar Ray Robinson, man, people marveled at Roy Jones Jr. being able to throw the double, triple hooks and things like that. But Sugar Ray Robinson was doing that stuff, and that was a regular part of his repertoire. But not only doing it with precision and power, but he made it look so effortless. It was like Sugar Ray Robinson, watching him throw punches in combination, you could set it to music. And that was the whole thing about rhythmic and perpetual motion that Kurt so fondly speaks about. Because fighters back then, when they worked out in the gym, they kind of moved as if there were music playing, and it was jazz or something like that, bebop, whatever, but they punched with that type of rhythmic and perpetual motion. And in the ring, Sugar Ray Robinson could do things that you could see fighters do when they're shadow boxing, but he could actually translate shadow boxing moves into ring activity, you know, and that was what was magnificent about him as well. He could get those shots off, man, and throw those double and triple shots, step in and out, be stepping back and hit a guy and knock him out. It's like amazing. And sometimes it was the hand speed alone. But the thing that really stands out was we never saw him at his best when he was at welterweight. There's no film of him being, could you imagine? Because at middleweight, he was so scintillating, but it's like they're saying that his welterweight fights were even more amazing, and that's kind of hard to fathom, you know. So to talk about Ray Robinson, and it's funny because when you see him, like when he's outside the ring, and he wore the conch, right? And so his hair's always nice and laid and whatnot. But in the ring, his hair was always like all over his head or something, you know, and it was like he looked like a total different person. And he was, because as Kurt has often said about him, he was a slugger in a boxer's body. I mean, he loved fighting. He loved, as far as when he's in there competing, he had a real high competitive nature or whatever. But if I'm correct, he didn't really like boxing. You know, he didn't like the sport, but he went in there. It was his job, and he knocked people out. He cleaned their clock. Sugar Ray Robinson was a great fighter, and it's not an exaggeration for how great he was, because there were a lot of great fighters back there in his era. But people today speak dismissively of him, including former champions and everything, when they really need to go and open up some books and study, and open up films and study and see how great this man truly was.
Yeah, Ray Robinson, born Walker Smith Jr., May 3rd, 1921, Alley, Georgia. He would have been lightweight champion if it weren't for Sammy Angot. Sammy Angot chickened out. He fought him, but it had to be over the lightweight limit. So if he lost, he would still keep his title. And that's what happened. Sammy Angot was a very good fighter, if not great. And they fought, and Robinson beat him, but he couldn't get the title because it was over the lightweight limit. So he would have been lightweight champion. As a welterweight in his prime from 1940 to 1951, he lost one fight. He was 128-1 with 2 draws and 84 knockouts. The first 11 years of his career. You know, he won 91 fights in a row from 1943 to 1951. His lone loss coming from Jake LaMotta when he was 40-0, and he beat Jake 5 out of 6 times and knocked him out. And the infamous 1951 St. Valentine's Massacre fight. And Ray was fast. He was powerful. His punch packed dynamite in both hands. He threw in combinations. He doubled up on his punches. He tripled up on his hook. You know, and he could have just won a lot of those fights just by boxing, but he didn't want to do that. So he utilized his speed and turned it into power, meaning that the more punches he threw, the more power that was going to be on him, and I'm gonna get you out of here with something, mainly the left hook. But that's Sugar Ray Robinson, and he fought 18 world champions and 10 Hall of Famers. When they say he ducked Charlie Burley, that's not true, because I can break the timelines down, but I'm not gonna go into that. But Sugar Ray Robinson was an unbelievable fighter. We'll never see that again, man. 91 fight win streak, 108 knockouts, 174 wins. And a lot of them losses came after the age of 37 and 40. So Sugar Ray Robinson, man, was just unbelievable hand speed. But the next guy I want to talk about was dynamic, and he used to throw Sugar Ray Robinson like combinations, was Roy Jones Jr. Roy Jones Jr. was athletically as gifted as any fighter that I have ever seen in my life. Leaping left hook, didn't need a jab, didn't use a jab. You can look at his knockouts against Tholang Malenga and Art Solano and Murky Sosa and Brian Brandon and Vinny Pazienza and Reggie Johnson. Those were some of the most electrifying highlights you would ever see a fighter do. It's like a video game. What can you tell me about Roy Jones, Stormy?
Man, let me tell you something about Roy Jones, man. Roy Jones Jr. I mean, this guy, you just named one of his opponents that I saw him fight. What were those names you said again? Because you named one of the guys, and you said Talande Malinga. What was the Latin fighter you named that Roy fought, Kurt? I'm trying to remember his name. You're on mute.
Oh, I said Murky Sosa, Tholang Malenga, Art Solano, Vinny Pazienza, Brian Brandon. I think the only Latin fighter I said was Murky Sosa, I believe.
No, it was somebody else that he fought. I'm trying to remember the guy's name. And he fought him. He was still at junior middleweight when he fought him. That was my first professional fight of Roy that I saw.
Oh, you must be talking about Jorge Vaca.
There you go, Jorge Vaca. Yeah, I was trying to remember his name, and I couldn't remember it for nothing. Because it was on the undercard of a pay-per-view. And, Roy, of course, I knew about him from the 88 Olympics, but, dude, when I saw him fight Vaca, it is like the first round he comes out and he throws a punch and hit him on top of the head and drops him. I was like, who is this dude? Because the punch was so fast and powerful. And that was when Roy used to wear that little line of hair at the back of his neck. Remember, Kurt? He have nearly a bald head, but that little line like a shag across the back.
I used to want to jump in the TV and shave it off real bad.
But that was funny, man. And even back then they were talking about the possibility of him fighting Terry Norris, remember, because he was at junior middleweight, but he was so muscular he could not stay at junior middleweight very long. And Terry Norris wasn't going to fight him because Roy would have smashed Terry, I believe, but that would have been an interesting fight to see. But looking at Roy and looking back on how good he was, he had so much of speed and great timing that he didn't have to use true boxing skills. He could improvise what was happening in the ring and get away with something with his speed alone. That was something that I noticed about him. He would get in there with guys who could not compete because it was almost like he could read what they were doing before, before they do it. And he was just very good at it, man. And it was just exciting to watch him do what he did. Roy was very, very, but for as great as he was, and they called him the fighter of the decade for the 90s, I still have separation between he and Robinson. And I think it's simply because Robinson had the technical down. He could do what he did because he had talent, but he had the technical down. Roy didn't have the technical down. Roy didn't use a jab very much. He would use a lot of check hooks and leaping, lunging hooks and stuff like that. And he paid tremendously as his athleticism eroded. And those were one of the things that you can kind of hold him accountable for, not being able to be technical when necessary. But I'm not trying to be overly critical, but it's just there's something I noticed that's a separation. But for the guys during his era, he was head and shoulders above a tremendous amount of them with athleticism and his speed. One fight that never took place, I would have loved to see he and Michael Nunn go at it, because that would have just been like two hummingbirds going at it, and you know how fast hummingbirds flap their wings and whatnot. So it'd been interesting. But yeah, that's what I have to say about Roy.
Yeah, Roy was very dynamic, and just like I said, he was another one of those fast guys who hit real hard, threw punches with murderous intentions. When you look at the Murky Sosa fight, I often said in that fight, it looked like Roy had three arms, man. The punches were so fast, you only seen the punches coming back. So if I was sitting on my couch, I can imagine what Murky Sosa saw. He saw like 5 arms, because he was hitting them with everything. And just like when Jim Lampley said, Murky Sosa has never been down in his professional career. Then bang, Roy caught him with, I think, a straight right and put Murky Sosa down. They stopped it a little bit too early, but Roy was getting him out of there because he was hitting him at will. But Roy was another one of those guys that was fast, man, and had a lot of power. Now, Ali had fast hands, but Ali was a sharp puncher. He cut a lot of his opponents, because when Ali punched, he would turn his wrist at the end of the punch. And back in them days, that leather was like cowhide. It was tough, and they would cut you. So Ali knew that. And when you go and look at his knockouts, when he fought Frazier the first time, he was 31-0 with 25 knockouts. Ali wasn't a hard puncher, but he was a sharp puncher. But he got guys out of there. But look at the combination, and this is my favorite combination of all time, when he shuffled and he hit Cleveland Williams with like a 7-8 punch combination. It was so pretty. Oh, man, I can rewind that all day and watch it. What can you tell me about the hand speed of Muhammad Ali, Stormy?
Wow, you're talking about there were comparisons to welterweight and middleweight with his hand speed, because he was so fast for such a big man at 6'3" and 210 plus pounds, light on his feet like a middleweight, and just it was amazing watching him prior to his license being taken away, because he was so much above everyone else. He could carry guys literally and not even look like he's carrying them. It's like, because he could turn it on when he got ready. But he had technical. Ali had technical ability. His jab was a sharp jab. It was a jab that would shoot a certain kind of way. It was, to this day, the only person I've seen to throw a jab like Ali, and this may sound weird to anyone listening right now, the only person I've seen throw a jab like Ali was Will Smith. And Will Smith studied hours and hours of film of Ali when he played him for the film role. He threw the jab exactly like Ali. And that jab that Ali had was a jab that would bust you up. It would cut you, because it was a sharp shot. Like Kurt said, he turned the punch over at the end. It had a snap to it. But the way he would throw it out there, it had a pop to it and everything. And Some people talked about him flipping his hands. You know, we were talking about glove controversies and stuff with Tyson Fury or whatever. And they say, well, Ali glove flopped around. If you look at Ali's punches, that was a snap and a twist at that. And that's something that they used to teach. They don't really even teach that anymore, that you turn the punch over at the very end where it has a snap where your thumb is actually turned toward the floor. Okay, and that your first two knuckles on your fist in your glove are being twisted into the opponent's eye or around his eye, and that tears the flesh. That's why Ali used to cut people so much, because when he threw those shots, he turned them over like that. And he had tremendous accuracy because he would be punching you at or around your eyes or at your directly at your chin. And those straight shots with you either coming in or he coming in toward you, throwing those type of shots were tremendously effective. And the accuracy alone would make people drop. Like, you look at the beautiful combinations that he landed on Cleveland Williams. That was poetry in motion. You could not ask for a better look at a fighter offensively than the night that he fought Cleveland Williams. And it wasn't so much that Cleveland Williams wasn't on his level or whatever. I believe whoever was in the ring with him on that night could have got the same, because that's what he brought that night. He was fluid in his movement. He was fluid in his punches. He had tremendous rhythm of how he threw the shots. He could hit you with 2 or 3 shots before you could get your guard up to defend yourself, and just put you on the seat of your pants, and never threw body shots. That's what I have to say about Ali, Kurt.
And I'm gonna say this: the Ali that I saw against Cleveland Williams, no heavyweight comes close. His eye and foot coordination, his hand speed, it was just magnificent. Here's a heavyweight that can move like a middleweight. He was gliding around the ring, across the ring, and he used to play a lot. Now, it did cost him against Henry Cooper when he got knocked down. He played too much. He said that he'll retire if he can't beat Burt Cooper. He thought he was just going to show up and that was going to be it. And in boxing, you can't do that. I don't care how great you are, but Ali learned his lesson. But when he fought Williams in 66, he was just on another level. And I got him number 2 of pound for pound all time. But just imagine if his license got suspended, because people think of Ali in the 70s. I think of Ali in the 60s. When he was young and he was full of energy, and he didn't have to fool anybody. He could move around the ring. His athletic ability was second to none, but he was technical. He was so technical. It was just, it almost hurt. This lead right hand was a beautiful thing, and hooks and jabs, and he'll move. And that Cleveland Williams fight, you want to see, like you said, Stormy, poetry, emotion, man. Everybody watch that fight, because that was one of my favorite fights, man. Unbelievable. Another guy who had hand speed I thought was going to be better was a fighter by the name of Zab Judah. Zab Judah best fight when he fought Mickey Ward and he fought Tehran Millette. Oh, man, he was hitting Millette with some terrific combinations, man. He was really, really fast. But Zab lacked intangibles. He was a terrific offensive fighter, but a fighter with that hand speed and ability, he didn't transition from offense to defense that well. So he's supposed to have been harder to hit than what we saw in his career. Zab Judah was a very good fighter. If Floyd was outboxed, it was against Zab Judah. Floyd had to make an adjustment. Floyd said, "The hell with this." He forced Floyd to come and get him, and he brought out another dimension in Floyd. But Zab Judah was a guy who had terrific hand speed and was full of talent, but didn't have the tangibles. What can you tell me about Zab Judah, Stormy?
Interestingly, Zab Judah, early on, when the word about him was starting to spread, they were saying Pernell Whitaker with power, and that was because after, working around the gyms and whatnot, and he, looking early on like a guy who could move like Pernell and everything. But Zab got into those terrible habits that have befallen a number of fighters, with that carrying your hands low and things like that. Sweet Pea could get away with that because of his elusiveness and his natural ability to be able to avoid shots. But Sweet Pea also had technical foundation that was really a part of his career, which is why he was able to go up in weight and fight so many fighters that were much bigger than he and everything. But Zab had tremendous hand speed, and if I were to liken him to anyone, it wouldn't be Sweet Pea. It would be like a southpaw Meldrick Taylor, because he had heart and he had spirit like Meldrick, but not the ring IQ. And that would probably, even as I say that, it might even blow Kurt away saying it, that's who I saw him like, Meldrick Taylor, not Sweet Pea. And he lost fights that he may not or should not have lost due to poor decisions in the ring and outside the ring. And his talent was so far off the charts, he should have been a much greater fighter than he ended up being. And I will say something here also, that some of the chat listeners, or even some of the people peeking through the blinds out there or whatever, he had more talent than Floyd Mayweather. And it was, the sky was the limit for him. He just didn't have the mental acumen as far as being a professional fighter. And I really think he could have worked with some more professional and more renowned trainers than just his dad. His dad could have still been a part of the process, but I think he needed to develop beyond what his dad had brought to him, because there was so much more that he could have graduated, so much more of a level he could have graduated toward had he been, had someone else to bring in some more teaching for him. But those are my. D had a question out there where she was asking, are there any Cuban fighters who were fast-fisted that you can recall?
Who gave Sugar Ray Robinson all he can handle. He had the bolo punch. He had very fast hands. That would be Kid Gavilan that comes to mind. Sugar Ray Robinson had a hard time with him. Robinson had really hard time. He barely won those fights against Kid Gavilan. Very, very quick-handed fighter. Absolutely. Another fighter, well, getting on Zab, you just can't throw punches, caution to the wind. Like, there's different levels and types of speed. There's educated speed. You know who had that abundance? Pernell Whitaker. And he had timing and speed. That what made him so great. Because he didn't just throw a whole bunch of punches that look pretty. He was very fast, but it was a lot of educated speed. That's what I call it. Like Camacho threw caution to the wind. He threw a whole bunch of punches. Leonard did the same thing when he got you hurt, as you see against Tommy Hearns when you look at it. But Pernell was a very steady fighter, man, and he was fast, but he was educated, and that's what made him tough to beat. Pernell, can just size you up, and he knew what punch to throw, and he was a different kind of fighter, because you got fighters who were fast, who were quick, but not educated. Zab was fast, but he didn't have educated speed like Pernell, because if Zab had educated speed, he would have won a lot of those fights that he lost. And, when you can't beat a Boulder mare with that talent, then something is really wrong with you. I always thought, I was like, man, Zab, he's supposed to be better than this. Shane Mosley is another one. Shane Mosley was fast as a lightweight, very fast. But he had a lot of power behind it. There's speed with power. There's educated speed, and speed, you just throw caution to the wind. How do you rank Pernell Whitaker's speed, Stormy?
I rank Pernell Whitaker's hand speed up there with almost all of the guys at the weights where he fought with something special added to it. Pernell Whitaker realized that with his physical attributes, he'd use them when necessary. That was boxing IQ, ring IQ. He didn't go out there and just throw stuff to throw. Like, Mel would swarm people with a barrage, right? And like, he'd throw 10 and maybe 4 or 5 would land solidly. Sweepy wasn't like that. He'd make them count. And that's where that timing would come in, like you said, because I remember in his fight with Chavez, how he was working Chavez's body and he was using his hand speed, hitting Chavez around at the liver and around the sides by the kidneys and throwing uppercuts to the stomach and stepping around as Chavez was like lifting his feet trying to come after him. And he would throw him like fat, like that, but in succession, but not wasting anything. And primarily almost everything was landing. And then he would kind of do that dip move and feint Chavez and then shoot a straight left to his chin. Bow! Quickness that Chavez, it kept him off balance. He didn't know what was coming, where from. He thought he was going to be in another fight like with Meldrick Taylor, but Whitaker not only had a higher boxing IQ than Taylor, but he had the fortune of being able to watch what happened with Meldrick Taylor and realize I can beat this guy without trying to show who's the most macho, So his hand speed, he used it when necessary. Remember his rematch with Jose Luis Ramirez. That guy didn't win a round. You know what I mean? He beat the guy so bad that I know Ramirez would have loved to say no mas, but he didn't. He just hung in there and took his whooping. But Sweet Pea was hitting him with combinations, and the guy was like bending over and everything, and he just finished him with combinations and then jogged backwards. Like, come on, get some more. It was beautiful to look at. He should not have lost the first fight because he won and they didn't give him the decision. And that was all politics. But in that second fight, oh man, in his hometown of Virginia, man, he stripped that guy. He stripped him naked. And I loved it because he did it with technique. He did it with smarts. And like I said, he outpunched him. Ramirez spent most of the night trying to cover up and block. And Whitaker beat the crap out of him. So that's what I thought about Whitaker and his hand speed. But I thought he got the maximum out of it in using it in circumstantial situations. He didn't waste a lot.
Yeah, he was economic with his punches. That made it even tougher. Because you never knew when he was going to punch. He was fast. He was like an assassin, man. Where he was very patient. He was meticulous. Against Chavez, you see he was turning Chavez and turning him. It's hard to beat a guy with hand speed, but it's really hard to beat a guy who has hand and foot speed. It's a big difference. There's a big difference. And that was Pernell. Pernell was a very patient fighter, and he just didn't throw a lot of punches. He made all his punches count. And a guy with a hand speed is always exciting. Always exciting. I mean, you could talk about Greg Page. I bring up Greg Page because here's a guy that was overweight, but he could box like the Dickens, as Stormy say, and he had fast hands. When he went to South Africa and he knocked out Coetzee, Jerry Coetzee. They used to call him the Bionic Man because he had operations out of his right hand. He had metal plates in his right hand. So, everybody used to call him the Bionic Man. But, when he went to South Africa, and he hit him with that left, right, left. I said, man, and the guy was bouncing on his toes, and he was overweight, but he could box and he was fast. And somebody in the chat, and I'm Bruce Goals. I meant to answer your question a long time ago. You said, I'm sorry to backtrack, but Bruce Goals is my brother. He said was there a secret fight between Jack Johnson and Jack Dempsey? There's rumors, but I think people say that because they just want Jack Dempsey to be in a ring with a black fighter. There's no proof of that, so I would have to say no. It was just speculation. But anyway, I lost my train of thought. What did I talk about? Purnell?
Yes.
Purnell had fast feet, and he could beat you to a spot. See, when a fighter got fast feet, and he taught Mayweather that, beat the guy to the spot. Because Nassim Richardson picked up on that. Because he told Shane, don't let him beat you to the spot. And I know what he's talking about. Because a guy with fast feet, he thinks of that ring as his, the real estate. And footwork makes a hell of a lot of difference, man. And it's not a mistake that when you think of the great fighters, you think of footwork. The footwork is everything. And plus the hand speed. That's why Purnell was tough to beat. Even when he fought Azuma Nelson, he won every round against Azuma Nelson. Nobody does that. But he made Azuma Nelson look like an amateur. It had nothing to do with weight. Because Azuma Nelson was a smaller man. He beat the hell out of Zuma. He just boxed the pajamas out of him. So those are guys who has really fast hands, man. And I said Greg Page, and another guy was Tony Tubbs, who was the overweight guy that has very quick hands. And when he fought Tyson, he won the first round, but Mike was on his game. That was my favorite Tyson fight because you saw the talent level Mike had. But Tony Tubbs was boxing beautifully until he got caught. So what do you have to say about Greg Page and Tony Tubbs, Stormy?
Well, both of those guys, they were kind of similar. And what was interesting about a lot of those guys in that era, a lot of them had the fortune of being able to spar Ali in the gyms. So they were able to pick up a little bit of, what the greatest was able to, leave behind with their experiences. Both men could box. I really liked Tony Tubbs' boxing style. But man, he refused to get in the best of shape on a regular basis. He had very fast hands. He threw snapping punches. He threw feints. He had a little bit of a quality of Jersey Joe with his footwork because he didn't dance. He kind of glided left and right, in and out, and threw great feints and could turn his shoulders and give you looks. But he just wasn't committed as a world-class fighter. And interestingly, Greg Page was similar. And Greg Page had a lot more of trying to emulate Ali as far as his movements and everything. But you kind of would wonder, what's on Greg Page's mind? Because, you mentioned the fight with he and Jerry Coetzee. And that was an interesting fight. And you and I have laughed about that fight, Kurt, because he was whooping Coetzee so easily that he got into dancing and doing the electric slide and everything while he was in the ring with him. And he could have stopped the guy earlier, but Greg Page wasn't.
That was Scott Ledoux.
Huh?
That was Scott Ledoux.
Scott Ledoux, I'm sorry. I was thinking about Coetzee, but Scott Ledoux, yeah, his fight against Ledoux, that showed how he would get off the game plan or whatever. And he could just go out there and do what he's supposed to do. But that was Greg Page. So some nights he could look like $1 million. And then the other nights he looked like $5. Seriously. And with no disrespect, but I just don't believe he was all that motivated. And it's a shame because he had the talent. Remember, people were calling him the new Ali early in his career, very early in his career, because of how he was able to move and throw shots and combinations, and he was elusive. You didn't hit him with clean shots early on, but all of that kind of went away with his lack of discipline and everything. And he and Tony Tubbs were probably, long lost twins, because they were similar in a lot of the same aspects. Would you say that, Kurt, that they had similarities about themselves?
Oh, without a doubt. That's why I put the two names together. That wasn't by mistake.
Yeah.
They was overweight guys those guys can fight only if they would have got in shape. But people forget how wild the 80s were, and it had a lot to do with boxers, because Michael Dokes and another guy I'm bring up, I just brought them up. They was of the same ilk. They wasn't determined fighters. They were lethargic sometimes, man. Like you say, they looked like $1 million in some fights, and then looked like $2. And I used to get so frustrated. My father used to throw his cigar on the floor, talk about fight, boy, fight. You ain't come to fight tonight. You never know what you got from Tony Tubbs and Greg Page and Michael Dokes. You never knew what you got from them. They were talented, but for some reason, living hard and partying and gallivanting around town. When they got a decent payday, their next fight was going to be a bust, because that money was always in the bank.
You're so right, man. You're so right in that. It's like I couldn't have said that any better, and that's why I cracked up laughing, because you're right. If they had a great fight and they celebrated, the next time you saw them, you can almost guarantee that they were going to look like crap. And I called them twins, but since you threw Dokes in there, they triplets now.
When Michael Dokes got knocked out by Jerry Coetzee, I was like, he shouldn't lose to a fighter like that. But he lost, and he was very inconsistent. Tony Tubbs and Greg Page the same. You never knew how Greg Page was going to look, but he got himself together. If he wasn't in the best of shape, he was in mental shape when he went to South Africa. Maybe he was motivated by being in South Africa. I always thought that. And he fought like it. You can see it. He wanted to win that fight. He wanted to. He was committed. He committed to himself. He looked in the mirror and said, I have to win this fight for the people of South Africa. And he went out there and he almost knocked Coetzee's head off. He was really good in that fight, man. But like I said, they got a decent payday. The next, they weren't going to show up. They was going to lose. I could see all of them dressed to a T, holding a brown paper bag with liquor in it.
Oh. Hey, I want to go to a question in the chat, because I don't want people to think I'm not paying attention. Eric R. is asking Kurt, he says, can Tank take parts of Tyson's style and add it to what he does? I'll let you answer that. What do you think, Kurt? Tank Davis.
Eric R. said that. That's a very, very good question. And I would say yes, because if I was training Tank, I would tell him to get inside and go to the body. Mike Tyson used to break people down by working the body, then going up to the head. He's going to be fighting tall fighters, especially Leo Santa Cruz, who likes to hunch over. Go to the body and then bring the uppercut right up the middle, and you will do major damage to Santa Cruz and a lot of fighters. Tank problem will be when he fights athletic fighters. Like if I'm just throwing names out there, Gary Russell or Devin Haney or Shakur Stevenson, because they can offset that power. Just like Tyson when he fought the Douglas and Holyfields, Mike had problems with athletic fighter, but Tank is athletic too, but just not as athletic as them, because his size might be at a disadvantage, especially if he's fighting long fighters like a Haney. But I'm impressed with Tank. But Tank, now that he's fighting top competition, and he should start with Santa Cruz, kill the body and the head will follow. if he goes to the body early against Santa Cruz, he can get him out of there. But to answer your question, Tank, short, use your lack of height to your advantage, like Marky Marciano did, like Joe Frazier did, like Mike Tyson did. You can use it to your advantage by ducking under punches, and Tank is a hard puncher. Kill the body.
Absolutely. Matter of fact, he's young enough to learn a little bit of those elusive techniques that Tyson used to use, as far as bobbing and weaving and coming out of a crouch, springing up into opponents and springing up into the shots that he throws. That would work, I think, tremendously for him. You know, when Sean Porter fought, I'm trying to think whether it was Thurman or Danny Garcia. I believe it was Danny Garcia. There were a few sequences during that fight in the middle rounds where Porter used Mike Tyson like upper body movement, and he was bobbing and weaving and springing into Garcia with certain shots. And I was like, whoa, he's looking like Mike Tyson in there. And he was very effective doing that, because being the shorter guy and with the shorter reach, Porter would have to always put himself in a position to do something but be vulnerable at the same time. But when he was using that particular technique, it was working very well for him. And he only went to it a couple of times in spots during that fight. And so for a fighter, Eric R., like Tank Davis, it would really behoove him to learn that upper body movement and be able to bend his knees and get into a crouch and spring up out of that. You know, again, with the way that he punches, it would be very advantageous for him. And as Kirk say, be working the body. Shouldn't even worry about hitting a guy in the head early on. Jab to the chest, look to slip off of a guy's shot, like he's fighting Santa Cruz, look to slip off of Santa Cruz's shots and get into that body and just open up like a son of a gun on the inside, and jab to the chest, jab to the chest. Because I believe he has the power that could get to the guy, but if a guy could see the shots coming, he could brace himself for it and stuff like that. But you bang that body and break him down, it don't matter. He won't be able to recover after getting hit with concussive shots, because his body will betray him. So that's one of the things that he could definitely do. And if he were dedicated as a fighter and trained hard, it could be an easy thing for him, because you have to do that stuff when you're young. See, Porter is old. For him to go back and try to do those things, he could only do it a little bit. But for someone like Tank, he could make that a part of his repertoire as far as being an offensive fighter. So yes, that's what he could do. He could take some of the techniques of what Tyson used to do well and apply it for himself. But understand this too, coming out of the Mayweather camp, they're not going to do that, because they think their way is the best way. But there's a reason why there are coaches and trainers out there who can also put you on track to what you do best and what might be best for you. I remember that Yank Durham and Eddie Futch, when they had Joe Frazier fight Ali in their first fight, they devised a plan of Joe bobbing and weaving at a lower angle than he normally did to make Ali punch down at him, so that Ali, who carried his hands low already, his hands would be even lower, because he's trying to hit Frazier down low and throw uppercuts at Frazier, and Frazier could spring into Ali. And that's why Frazier was so successful in that first fight, because he was still young enough and agile enough and hadn't taken the physical damage enough that he could get down in that low crouch like that and come out and spring up into Ali's chest and whatnot. So, but yeah, that's what I have to offer on that as well.
Yeah, that was a brilliant game plan that they devised for Frazier when he fought Ali. You know, Bob, I'm telling you, Boxing is about strategy. You can have all the power in the world, all the speed in the world, but you need boxing IQ. You have to break your opponent down, see something, not Mikey Garcia or whatever. Like Max Mellon, when he fought Joe Louis, he said, I see something. And he saw Joe, with his hands, dropping his hands after he jabbed. And he capitalized on it. So boxing is the sweet science, and it's a thinking man's sport. You may think, oh, you just go in there and throw punches, but no, a thinking fighter will beat you 9 times out of 10. You may get lucky once, but a guy be like, yeah, he likes to do this. Like Teofimo Father was looking at Lomachenko on the laptop, and they said he likes to move side to side. And they was right. They said, Teofimo's father said when he jabbed, he's not even hitting you with the jab, but that's to keep you occupied and keep your hands at home. And I was like, okay, they studying Lomachenko. Now, whether they execute a game plan and Teo go out there and follow it, or he'll get run out the arena. But we're going to see, because once you can break your opponent down, then, you're going to be successful. And that was one of Floyd many strengths. He had a team of people that used to watch their opponents. Like against Juan Manuel Marquez, they say, Floyd, all you have to do is jab this guy and work off the jab, and you'll beat him. And that's what they did. Floyd jabbed and mixed up his punches and made Juan Manuel Marquez look like an amateur. He beat him really bad after a 22-month layoff. So strategy is everything. We're going to do a show about boxing IQ in the upcoming weeks. And, because the smarter fighter will always win. Muhammad Ali, the rope-a-dope against Foreman. Foreman was bamboozled. And Zaire, Africa. Floyd fought smart. That's why he won all his fights. So boxing IQ, like Leonard and Robinson, they was guys who had a high IQ. They knew how to win. They devised the scheme, and they athletic ability followed. So absolutely, Stormy. Yes, indeed.
Yes, sir. And this message to the chat, we really appreciate when you ask those questions and stuff like that, because we get a chance to talk boxing, as I like to say, under the hood. So, man, there's no such thing as a stupid question, because whatever you ask, we'll try to, come back with something for you to give you something to think about, or to put you on the right track to getting where you want to be after posing the question. So just always remember that. And when we ask you, hey, put something there in the chat or whatever, just do it. It also helps continue the conversation that we have. So, and Kurt enjoys that as well when someone asks questions, because it gives him a chance to express what he knows. So don't ever think that there's a such thing as a goofy question to ask out there. Keep them coming.
Absolutely. You chat, you make the channel, we appreciate you spending your time. You could be doing something else, but you set 2 hours and you listen to the show, and it's a pleasure, talking about, spreading my knowledge and just talking about fights, because we're based on professionalism and knowledge. We could talk about any era, any fighter, any situation, and we don't even got scraps. So we're like a 3-man band. This is like a dream team, but we love the chat. Bruce Gold and Lala D, everybody, Eric R, everybody that's in the chat, man, we thank you, man. We really do, from the bottom of our heart. And once again, happy birthday to Scrapbook.
Absolutely. Happy birthday, Scrap. Hope you're out there listening, catching us here, because we're trying to hold it down while you're away. But it's tough, because you are part of the engine that makes this whole thing run, and we don't want to be without you. We want you a part of all of this as we roll. So, but yeah, we'll hopefully someone might have another question or two before we round out the end of the show. It's a great thing to get that participation from the chat.
Absolutely. Tomorrow we got a fight, Navarrete versus Villa. I think that's going to be a good fight. You know, I thought it was Saturday, but it's tomorrow, Friday. They had the weigh-in today, man. It's Boxtober. You know, a lot of fights. Even on Friday, a couple of fights on Friday. And, man, that Lomachenko is 8 days away. Just about next Saturday. I cannot wait. I'm going to have my food in front of the TV. And let's go. It's boxing. Everybody going to be doing live streams because this fight, Stormy, is highly anticipated. I've been waiting for this one.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little excited for it too. I'm not trying to be too excited on the air, but I am. This is good stuff, you know, when these guys are fighting each other. That's the thing about the sport of boxing. When they are making the matches that people want to see, and when the fighters who should be fighting one another make the efforts to do so, the sport is the best sport in professional sports. It really is. And that just lets you know how much they're skimming off the top for us, that they don't make the matches all the time. I mean, just earlier we were talking about certain names, you know, and it's like from the history and past, but those guys were fighting. Today, guys are sitting on the shelf and they're fighting matches of how, you know, opponents that, how long it'll take them to get rid of them and stuff like that. We don't want to watch that. We want to see guys being given a chance for ebb and flow and back and forth and things like that. Like the fight that took place last week with Zepeda and Baranchik. Those were two men that should be fighting each other. And look at what they delivered. My goodness. Still talking about that fight. Eric Jenkins is asking Kurt, Jamal Charlo, how good or great could he be?
Jamal Charlo is a good fighter. He has some things he has to work on, like his defense and distance, because sometimes he let Derevchenko get too close, and Charlo got hurt with a body shot. I believe it was the 8th round, but he recovered and he went on to beat Derevchenko. He's a good fighter. He has to work on his defense, especially if he fights Canelo. He has to work on his footwork. That's how you beat Canelo. He stands a little too still at times, and you can't do that with a Canelo because Canelo's going to be looking to set him up with something. And Canelo is a counterpuncher. To offset Canelo counterpunching and his savviness and his experience, Charlo's going to have to use his feet. If Charlo uses his legs more and with that jab, he can be even a better fighter.
Yeah, I got a video coming out about Jermell Charlo, and I just want to say this to answer Eric Jenkins' question. Much to your surprise or whatever, Eric Jenkins, Jermell Charlo is the better fighter. He's the more complete fighter. He's the fighter with the greater upside, I believe. And, you know, that's just a lead into what's coming for a video that I have prepared that's going to be coming out for Jermell Charlo. But yeah, Jamal is solid, but Jermell is better. So that doesn't mean that his brother can't catch up, but there is a separation between the two at this time. I feel. Nobody else has to feel that. If you do, that's on your own accord, but I have my reasons for feeling that and everything. So that's what I wanted to say about that. And Eric R. is asking, can you guys do a show on style, like the peekaboo stance and the shoulder roll Philly shell? Man, no. Because what do you think that the shoulder roll and the Philly shell is the only thing about boxing? Come up out of that, man. Go to Floyd Mayweather gym and you can learn all about that and watch all your Floyd Mayweather tapes and everything. And you can learn all about that. There's so much more to boxing than a Philly shell or the damn shoulder roll as Lala D like to call it, the damn shoulder roll. So it's like, yes, we could do a show on styles, but that's not a style. Okay? That's a defensive posture. Okay? And it's also a tactic, but it's not a style. That's why guys who go out there trying to fight like that get their butts whooped all the time, because it's not a style. Okay? It's not. But the thing about it is, when you do that, it's supposed to be done at certain times, under certain circumstances. But you got guys out there today, they get off the stool when the bell rang and they run out there in that position like that. It's ridiculous. Now, you guys just wanted to hear me rant, Eric Jenkins. You know that. I'm not Eric Jenkins, Eric R. That was Eric R. asking that damn question about the damn Philly shell, as Lala D likes to say. Go ahead, Kurt.
I'm going to break that down next time, Eric R. I'm going to tell you where it originated from, who invented it. The shoulder roll been around since the early 1900s. There's a fighter named Dave Holly from Camden, New Jersey, who was the inventor of the shoulder roll. Other people used it, but he was the first one. And Georgie Benton used it, and Floyd Mayweather made it famous, but the inventor was Dave Holly of Camden, New Jersey. Like 1901, 1902, he used it. He was a scientific fighter.
Yeah. I thought I'd get a laugh out of people with that one. It's true, though. It's not a style. It's a tactic and it's a technique. But there's so much more to boxing than that. Because remember, boxing is about hitting and not being hit. So to be able to have your hands in a more proper position, ready to block, parry, catch, shoot, counter, if your hands are down in that position for majority of the time, the other fighter can be getting off against you. You know, George Foreman came back with the Archie Moore cross arm defense, and he stopped using it because guys were getting off on him too much, and he was too slow to come up out of that with counter shots and stuff like that. So he went back, to his mummy defense, which is holding his hands up and his arms out, catching shots on the arms and blocking them and stuff like that. So, but, you know, Floyd Mayweather made that popular, I guess, you know, but if you look at a fighter like James Toney, he could use that, but he would use it under circumstances to draw guys in and stuff like that. So it was tactical. It was never meant as a means to just fight like that, you know. And James Toney was definitely a fighter who had far more tools than just being able to roll his shoulders, you know, and be in a closed up position to not punch, but to catch or block shots. So I just wanted to say that.
Yes, indeed. It's about that time. This was a great show, like always. This the norm for us, and we always have, you know, it brings us great pleasure to talk boxing with you guys, and I love it. It makes my day, it makes my weekend. I love it. I mean, we're boxing crazy people, man, and we're going to keep it going.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we want to thank the chat out there and everybody that participated, came in and hit the like button, the thumbs up, and the people who didn't decide to write in the chat, but they were out there checking us out. We appreciate everybody. And this is something that we can all come together for, because we learn, like Kurt has said so many times, we learn from the chat as well as, you know, vice versa. So never think that we don't take that to heart and to consideration, because we do. But Kurt, go ahead and give us some final thoughts and words, bro, and we'll go ahead and close things out.
It's been another banger, another hell of a show. Stormy B, man, great job. Thank you, chat, for joining us. We got a lot of great content coming your way. We put this together so we could talk about the great sport of boxing. And without arrogance or selfishness, we feel we have one of the best show, if not the best show, because we talk about fighters you'll never hear on other channels. And we take great pride in that. And life is boxing. Boxing is life. And I just want to say for everybody and the three wise men, I just want to say peace.
Yes, sir. And for me and our brother who's enjoying his birthday today, Scrapbook Boxing, and Kurt Sugar, we're going to say peace to everybody. Have a good night. Enjoy the fights tomorrow night. There are fights on tomorrow night. And we look forward to a week from now. We get that big fight that's coming up that everybody's talking about. And don't forget to tune in tomorrow night for the Friday night chop session with Stormy B, man, because me and Reggie Owens going to be cooking on some things as we do a little bit of review for the past week or so of boxing. And we're going to get things set up for what's coming up next week. So don't forget to tune in. Friday night chop session, 8 p.m. Central, right here on the Stormy B Man channel. So from my brother Curtis Anderson, a.k.a. Kurt Sugar, and myself, we're going to say peace to everybody and good night.
Peace.
But there was an intriguing now. But Ray Mercer has one of the best chins you will ever see. He has a granite chin. And that fight, he was taking some shots.
I knew Ray Mercer could take a good punch, but Tommy Morrison's left hook was something that was a little bit special because, and I recognized that early on because there's just, Tommy Morrison fought a lot of the guys on his way up that Mike Tyson fought, and he got a lot of the similar results that Mike Tyson got. So,
that Buddy Bear fight was something else. He had him do a 360. Joe Louis hit him so hard that Buddy Bear did a 360. That's a hard punch. Because Buddy Bear was over 6 feet. Brutal punch, Joe Louis. His brother Max Bear. Joe Louis hit him with a triple left hook. That ended it for Max Bear. Max Bear could take punches. In fact, Max Bear was said to have been the greatest right-hand puncher as a heavyweight.
Yeah, that was just one of those. I remember my dad. He was really into Sweet Pea Whitaker because he really liked Sweet Pea's natural. It was almost he had a. You can teach guys defensive tendencies and things like that, strategies, tactics. But Purnell had an instinctive way of going about how he fought and how to keep himself safe, and that's a talent, and it basically speaks to the notion that he understands something that's happening in the ring that a lot of fighters don't understand. They basically react or whatever, but his mind was like a computer in there. He could understand what's going on, and when he went up against quality oppositions that were supposed to be those to test his mettle, that radar became increasingly open and more sensitive, and he was very much dialed in. That's why in those fights, matter of fact, we could run off at least 2 or 3 more controversial decisions involving him, because they were always trying to give someone else an opportunity against him because he was that good.
Absolutely right, Stormy. I think of that like I think of the Billy Collins and Louis Resto fight. The Billy Collins just couldn't take it anymore and just wind up saying, I'm done with this whole thing called life. And, you got to be fair to fighters when they're in the ring. You can't unjust them. In this case with Louis Resto, they did that, between him and Panama Louis. But it can play a psychological role on the fight. I've seen many fighters after their careers, never the same person that they went in. And it's just unfortunate. I just wanted to get into one fight, though, with Ad Wargas and a guy by the name of Mexican Joe Rivers. Now, we're going back to like 1913. Jack Welch was the referee. He was the same referee that refereed Jess Willard and Jack Johnson in 1915. And it was a double knockdown. And all of a sudden, Jack Welch decided to pick up Ad Wargas as he's counting out Mexican Joe Rivers. As a matter of fact, he was hired for the remainder of Ad Wargas's career. But that was very controversial because they had it on film. But you had a lot of fights like that. But I just wanted to talk about that fight.
And I want to talk about another fight, and this fight right here. I mean, how can you not love boxing, man? It was a fight in 1978 at the old Spectrum where the Philadelphia 76ers used to play, Julius Erving and all those guys, man. It was a fight between one of my favorite fighters of all time, Matthew Saad Muhammad versus Yaki Lopez. They fought twice, and the significance of this fight is you can look at the first fight, which happened in 1978 in Philadelphia, and the second fight, which happened in 1980 in McAfee, New Jersey. It was the fight of the year. Look at round 8 of the first fight and the second fight. They're eerily similar. Yaki Lopez hit Matthew Saad Muhammad with like a 10-15 punch combination against the ropes. And the announcer's like, he's hurt, he's on his way out. And out of nowhere, don't ask me how, don't ask me who, don't ask me what. This is what legends are made of. Matthew Saad Muhammad started smiling at Yaki Lopez and came off the ropes and started bouncing and started hurting Yaki Lopez with his combination. I mean, you can't write this, man. Not even Rocky movies is this good. And so you look at round 8 of Matthew Saad Muhammad versus Yaki Lopez 1 and 2, but look at the first fight, round 8. Do you guys remember that fight in that round?
I do. And I remember that fight was so compelling. It was so compelling. It had a lot of passion behind it. And both men were going down, and up and down, up and down. And it was just so much passion. And Caveman Lee, as you know, he wanted to fight Marvin Hatton. He got stopped in the first round. But Caveman Lee, he was one of those guys that was in the arenas. He wasn't a main guy. And he had a lot of passion about him. And the fact that he was able to pull that off goes to show you the type of men they were at that time. That was a great round, great fight. Round 5 was something else.
Yeah, because usually when people get hit like that and they go.